Freedom. An idea long desired and sought after for centuries, and fought for by men that were forced to obey and submit to an authority that demanded their loyalty and received nothing in return. Multitudes of people of years past would be born and die under such tyranny. And if one scans the timeline of history, it is quite clear that in people's pursuit of freedom, in response to man's perpetual and unquenchable thirst for power, it has and it always will be of great cost and marked with the sacrifice of life. So when the time came that the new colonies in America saw fit that they should govern themselves, it was that age-old burning desire, hidden deep in the chambers of every heart: freedom. I truly admire their courage. Had the war been lost, the consequence of treason would have been absolutely dreadful. Indeed, the Americans' objective was treacherous, but very simple: to be free from England. And they fought. The cost was great, and they won their freedom. And we've been enjoying it now for 245 years. For most of us here in these United States, we have known nothing but the abundance that freedom brings. We have inherited the blessings suffered by those before, and know very little or nothing of its cost. Consequently, it is correct, it is appropriate, it is necessary that we all pause in respect to acknowledge all the individuals who have brought us to where we are today, all of those whose shoulders we stand upon, fighting for an idea that was worthy of their lives and for a cause that is infinitely greater than us all. And so, my friends, in the same respect, I invite you to turn your attention to the originator of this cause, the author of freedom, our Almighty Creator, who spoke the universe and this world and everything that we see into existence, and through whose sustaining power we are granted every breath, and through whose provision the heart in our chest beats. And here we all are, dwelling on this earth, granted the free will to do as we see fit, to walk, drive, or even fly across it as we please. Free will to work, build, and create to suit us. And God's not going to smite us for not doing it His way, make friends or make enemies, to love, hate, bless, or curse. And He forces nothing upon us other than the good things we receive from Him every moment. As for freedom of speech here on God's green earth, we are free to proclaim His praises or how much we hate Him, for love of our country or how much we hate of it. You will not be immediately silenced by the ruler of the universe. We are free to express compassion, gratitude, or encouragement to our neighbor. Or we can use our words to tear him down, behind his back or to his face. Yes, we can speak and we can do all these things without having the one that truly rules it all intervening and forcing us to obey Him. He gives us the choice, and we can choose to do so with or without any regard for the one that enabled us to do so. Yes, friends, it is safe to say that our Almighty Creator is truly the proprietor of freedom, and is the only ruling authority that grants it to His subjects in absolute completion. For now, make no mistake, everyone will give an account of what they did with their freedom. This free will that God grants to every human life, for every careless word and every action, and we will be found guilty of the wrong we chose to do. Most assuredly guilty in the presence of a perfect and righteous God, and no one has ever lived is above it or beyond it. We have taken free will and treaded upon Him. What could be done of this guilt? The first century in Israel was a time in which people were suffering as a broken nation by the oppression of a foreign nation. And what an oppression it was! A place where worship, commerce, and speech was heavily regulated, or altogether restricted, accompanied by the unhesitated penalty of death. And it would be the kind of death that was so cruel and so devastating it was inappropriate to even speak of at the time. And they cried out to their God. They cried out and said, "God, deliver us from our enemies. Restore your kingdom with a great king that will conquer Rome. And restore us to the great nation you made us to be. Give us our freedom." This kind of outcry was nothing new. It was the same cry Israel had for centuries before, and the same cry for the oppression that has taken place from all people all over the world for every century since. God, make us free. But every time mankind was granted with the liberty that freedom brings, it results in abundance and prosperity. But that prosperity over time brings complacency, which turns into apathy, and an apathetic nation is sure to become a nation in bondage. It seems that people of the world are instinctively self-destructive, and God knew. God knew the real problem. The real problem with Israel and their adversaries, and with this nation and that nation, and with this group and that group, and every human being. God knew that all the atrocities of the world, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, were the symptoms of a prolific and deadly disease. They were the effects of sin, not a problem of governance. And God knew that deliverance, freedom, and prosperity was never going to be the remedy, nor would it ever be. He saw that man was under the bondage of a self-inflicted, incurable disease. Then our Creator moved forward with a plan that had been in motion since the origin of mankind, a plan that could only be fulfilled at this particular time. His plan of restoration, His plan of redemption, His plan of salvation, not just for the oppressed people of first century Israel, but for all people and for all time. His plan to set us free. And so He was born, the great deliverer, the great soldier, the great liberator. God's one and only Son was born, and He grew in wisdom, stature, and in favor with God and man. His hands worked a trade. Then at the approximate age of 30, He set out to begin His ministry. He performed many miracles, healing the sick, the lame, the blind. You can read the accounts for yourself from the eyewitnesses that wrote it down in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. He even fed 5,000 people with 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And they tried to make Him their king right then and there, but He slipped away. He knew what He came here to do. Everyone that followed Him, especially His disciples, believed that God had sent Him to deliver them from their Roman oppressors. You can feed 5,000, you can feed an army. You give sight to the blind and make the lame walk. The soldiers of Israel could certainly take a battle. When they came to arrest Him, His disciples thought they were about to embark on a revolution that had been foretold in prophecy for hundreds of years, and they would be right by the side of this great and miraculous king. But when he didn't resist, they fled in fear. He was arrested and taken away to be tried. The leaders that opposed him hurled insults, made false accusations in a courtroom, and he made no defense for himself. They struck him with their fists, shredded his flesh with whips, and spit on him, and like a lamb led to the slaughter, he did not open his mouth. Then he was brought before a crowd that had gathered, and they shouted, "Crucify!" The same crowd who had greeted him with praises in the streets a few days before. The sway and sentiments of this crowd is truly a testament to the horrifying feebleness and folly of man. I suppose it could have been me shouting to kill. And then they led him away, carrying his own timber to be nailed to, up a hill called Calvary, just outside Jerusalem. And there they lay his beaten body down, drove nails in his hands and his feet, raised him high in the air, stripped him naked, and then they watched. And there he was. Perhaps it was a sunny day. Perhaps it was silent. Despite the crowd gathered, only interrupted by heckling or the murmuring of weeping. Never was there such a sight, nor could there ever be seen again the unparalleled collision of justice and injustice, of guilt and innocence, of mercy and cruelty. A disaster and a miracle, of oppression and freedom. All that is good and all that is evil is right there on display in the center of the world stage. Our Creator bled. This great King did not come to fight and conquer for our freedom. He came to pay the price for it. Our God gave us free will in His domain of creation, and in this freedom, He was tortured. And in this freedom, we choose to fall under the bondage of sin. We are guilty and indebted to Him, and He responds by taking our place, His life to save ours. It was a price we could never pay, and the punishment eternal. And a God so good, I can't even begin to say. He died on a Friday. He was buried on Sunday morning. Well, on Sunday morning he wasn't buried anymore. He appeared to many of His frightened, sheepish followers, who were soon thereafter emboldened powerfully with a message that led to their deaths. But the message lived on. A message that has been changing entire nations and individual lives for the past 2,000 years. A message that gets harder to ignore every time you hear it. And a message that gets ever so much sweeter for all those who have put their trust in it. And the same message you hear right now. It's God's story. It is the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. And all those who call upon the name of the Lord will be saved. And it is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Can you hear me, America? It is for freedom that Christ has set you free. Let this freedom ring from sea to shining sea. Let His freedom ring. Let it ring. Do you love it? Do you know it? Well, now you know his name. His name is Jesus. Happy 4th of July.